Welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
And I'm Uncle Dan.
And I'm Uncle Doug.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear. That's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields,
we're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get the one that we know of, so you'd better make the most of
it. Good, gentle folk of the Twitter, what is this? The Podverse.
Yes.
And uncles, co-uncles.
Here we are.
That's so good. I'm glad we rehearsed this bit.
Yeah, we're doing great.
This 148, and I'm telling you, 149, we're going to get it.
We're launching like SpaceX into this one.
We're hoping by 148 to have some of this down, but it seems doubtful.
No.
The trend, it's not trending well. So here we are at 148. What a fun show. I am going to, everything just, fuck. All roads point to Nazis. That's what I'm doing this week. Even fake ones.
Yeah.
Real Nazis, fake roads. It's weird.
And then I am going to check in on some old friends of ours from episodes past in a Heretics in the News. Heretics in the News.
And I am going to sort of talk about what we do. I mean, part of our whole thing is what I'm going to talk about. Does that make any sense? No, that didn't make any sense at all.
And we'll figure it out.
Yeah,
we're really rocking and rolling, baby.
We'll wing it.
But we'll figure it out.
This is atheist jazz, man.
Totally.
It's the gods you don't believe in.
It's atheist, and it's white, and it doesn't rhyme, and it's not on rhythm.
Yeah, that's perfect. So, and I just want to say a real quick thing. We've been getting quite a few emails lately from people that are kind of really having a hard time. And, other than just saying, hey, we feel it, we understand, there's not a ton we can do, but We're just glad you're here with us. And, we're having our struggles as well. But I'm glad we have this community. I'm glad I have reason to get out of bed one day a week. And that's what you guys do for me and for us. So
we talked about this very briefly, Mark, the other day, that the people who've left religion all over the world might be the biggest community of people in the world with a single thing in common. And if you're one of those people and you're depressed right now because of the way the world is or the woes you're feeling, you are literally less alone than probably anyone's ever been in history, because all of us are in that boat with you.
We are all drinking alone together.
Yes.
I think that's the fourth step of AA. And
that's our new T-shirt.
You're drinking alone together. So we love you and we feel you, and I'm giving you the biggest, virtual, socially distant hug I possibly can. So thanks for tuning in and making it so I don't have to go to Doug's house and see if he's alive every Sunday. So,
all right, let's do a show.
Do it.
Uncle Dan.
Hey, Uncle Doug, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you? Well,
I'll take that as a win.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Just the fact that I answer the phone is a big deal.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that each of us brings something to this show. Our own speciality.
Sure.
And sure. Uncle Mark tends to be the keeper of lost things, lost land masses, lost continent. You might call him incontinent.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's true. I'm like Frank Langella in The Finder of Lost Loves. Do you remember that terrible show that was on like one season in like 1980 or 1992 or something? Hilarious.
No. But nobody remembers
Nobody
that.
remembers it.
You're the only human being on the earth that remembers that.
Maybe
Frank Langella.
Oh, come on. Who doesn't like Frank Langella? But yeah, he was the finder of lost loves. I am the finder of lost things, including continents. So let's dive right in. Fellas, since we as a nation are about to feed millions of our children to the empty orange Moloch for no discernible reason by making them return to school, and since unmarked fascist shock troops are now kidnapping people unopposed in Portland, and since HBO didn't renew Watchmen for a second season...
Wait, are you kidding me?
No, they didn't fucking renew Watchmen. like one of the best television shows ever made.
I quit America. That's it. I quit.
I know.
That's it. That's all I can stands. I can't stands no more.
Yep. There was a camel's back, and it got broke.
It just straight broke. That was the straw. I know. That is just criminal. So, I know. Well, while you guys are in mourning, I was going to say I thought I'd do something silly and superfluous and light rather than add to the yawning sense of dread that has replaced baseball as the national pastime. But without realizing the fraught path I was heading down, I fucked up. And the silly thing I was doing turns out to be a bit of a fucking nightmare. So let's laugh through the tears and cry through the laughter together in this moment of triumphant stupidity and needless death. So, as we all know, all sorts of dumb or silly or provably wrong ideas come to us from ancient times, despite the insistence, as Dan demonstrated in his discussion on Ayurveda, that because the wisdom is ancient, it is also more better. This is, not true. Ancient stuff can be mind-blowing and incredibly cool, like pyramids and stuff, but it's seldom better than our current knowledge of the natural world and our understanding of our own brains.
Yeah, our pyramids are made of glass, and you get to gamble in them.
Yeah, it's so much better. Ask the Mayans, who, while fucking amazing, got a whole bunch of white people to shit their capris over the world ending in 2012 while failing to augur their own ending. Yeah. Or a mistranslation causing the world's greatest minds to think a girl who'd never had intercourse could give birth to a Jewish demigod, causing bizarre and destructive obsession with, quote, virginity and, quote, purity that haunts us to this day. Even a very stupid story that contradicts another one just before it on the very same page has educated human beings to this day believing men have an odd number of ribs and women have an even number, and they're shocked to find out it's not true in their first year of medical school. Right. True story. Do you know that happens a lot? Like,
it does.
First year med students are like, wait, what? So when olden-timey people didn't know the why or how of a thing, they made something up. Maybe they had some scraps of info or what they felt were good reasons, but basically they just made shit up. And
just like we do on this show.
All day.
Pretty much.
And that's so with today's subject, something the Greeks pulled out of their beautifully sculpted behinds since at least 450 BCE, that being Hyperborea.
Oh.
All right.
Hyperborea falls
I think that's what I had in elementary school.
I was always hyperbored.
Is that why you guys were taking Ritalin?
Yes.
Hyperborea falls into the same category as a couple of things we've talked about on the show before, those being terrae incognitae, regions yet to be mapped or understood, or for our purposes, fabled or made-up lands. We've discussed Atlantis, what I call Wakanda for white people.
White
Conda. More than once on the show, though we still haven't done a dedicated segment to it. And we've discussed my favorite terrae incognitae, Lemuria, in episode 102, the long, skinny continent that, according to various loonies, stretched from Madagascar across the Indian Ocean to India, and then east all the way across the Pacific to touch on coastal Washington state. So that's probably a true thing. Listen to our segment on Ramtha and his boozy lady friend Jay-Z Knight in episode 15 for that hilarity. It is super funny. And while there are tons of other terrae incognitae in lore and legend across the world's cultures, these three, Atlantis, Lemuria, and Hyperborea, still have relevance even today in some of the silliest and unfortunately ugliest corners of quasi-religious, occultist, and even political thought. It's seriously depressing. So, the ancient Greek writer Herodotus mentions a place where mysterious, very pale, very tall people live far from the warm Mediterranean. And he called that place Hyperborea, meaning a place beyond the north wind, as personified by the wind god of the north wind, Boreas. So hyper, beyond, Boreas, Hyperborea. Right. Who Herodotus believed lived around Thrace, which is where modern Bulgaria is, so somewhere north of there apparently, maybe in modern Romania. Hard to say. Now, I'm not sure that how much commingling there was between whatever tall white people lived beyond the mountains and the coastal Greeks, but this idea bubbled up a couple centuries before Alexander spread his tzatziki all over the place in the, quote, known world, conquering all sorts of distant lands and peoples. But it's likely there was either direct contact or stories carried by travelers, maybe. So the Greeks just made up the name of the place and the people. they filled in the blanks. After that, they filled in the blanks rather ludicrously. As time wore on, it was said that the Hyperboreans were 10 feet tall, lived 1,000 years, were always happy, and the sun was up 24 hours a day. Which, having been to Iceland, that's only happy for so long before you start losing your fucking mind. So there are some tantalizing clues here. It's basically impossible that any Greek had reached the North Pole in the 5th century BCE, but it is possible that someone they had come in contact with had been to the extreme north of Europe, where the sun can be up for more than 20 hours a day in summer.
Sure.
So the Greek thinkers and writers whose work on the subject survives could never agree on exactly where in the distant world they knew almost nothing about Hyperborea was, except that it was somewhere north and that the people were very white. This will matter more than any of us would like it to in a bit.
Oh, boy.
I had about 16 sources on this segment, but I do want to specifically credit YouTuber Huntress X Thompson. She did a great piece on this for her extremely info-heavy discussion on this topic. So, the Greeks bequeathed us their mythology and gods, but eventually moved on from them themselves, including the silliness of Hyperborea and its happy 1,000-year-old white people. But the ideas didn't disappear. As Europe industrialized and later colonized, some people there felt both alienated by the failures of conservative Western religion and society to address the pressures and alienation of modernity. Some of those people began to consume the exotic ideas and customs that flowed into the imperial capitals from their new colonial possessions, mostly from the East, in India, Egypt, Persia, China, etc.
Yeah.
This is an idea that the word for this kind of idea and study at the time was coined as Orientalism. This was the Western esoteric mystical movement. Basically a ton of generally upper-class, bored white people sucking up the cool bits of the thinking and cosmology and rituals of various brown people that they also thought of as lesser races. I know, right. It's kind of weird, but there it is. One such very famous esoteric mystic was Helena Blavatsky, who we talked about a bunch, especially in episode 54. She was among the first to dust off Hyperborea as a real place in the 19th century, and somehow she seanced her way into stating that humanity all derived from 3, quote, root races. That's never going to...
This is going to get good.
Yeah, it never ends well. So there were obviously the Atlanteans, the Lemurians, and the Hyperboreans. The root races were perfect and pure, and only defiled themselves down by copulating with apes and other animals.
Oh God!
But so rather than advancing from lower forms, she thinks we have regressed from higher forms, right?
Right.
Well, not us, not white people, but the white Hyperboreans did not get all beastie, and that's where white people come from. Ha! We got there, guys. Find me one goddamn religious idea that isn't rooted in racism. So,
right, exactly.
To be fair, and I'm not sure that's the right word, to Blavatsky, pretty much everyone in the esoteric movement and spiritualism in Europe was deeply into eugenics, otherwise known as scientific racism, which we discussed in episode 112, and every sort of pseudoscientific race theory and ethnographic balderdash, as they were into crystal balls and funny hats. So she was hardly alone, but it began to take hold that whether just as a symbolic idea or as a literal lost homeland, Hyperborea was the glorious northern home to the vastly superior white race. Blavatsky is considered one of the founders of the movement and philosophy known as esoteric fascism, and she was the first person to use the term Aryan to refer to the earliest known Europeans, the real but little understood Proto-Indo-European people.
Really?
So, yeah, she was the coiner. So Aryans were they actually weren't considered a race. It's a Sanskrit word meaning wise or something like that, and enlightened. So this idea of Hyperborea as the home of the original unpolluted white Ubermenches offered the confused and furious eugenicists and spiritual racists of the early 20th century, struggling to counter Darwinian evolutionary theory, a counter-narrative, one called polygenism, not polygonism, but polygenism, a garbage theory that says that different human races are of totally different origins. So they had a way not to be related to all the dusky races of the earth and going to bed at night untroubled by dreams of their black African great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great grandmother. Poor
Right.
dude.
So we just kind of stumbled into compatibility. These
Yes, that were genetically basically identical, came from like 3 totally different origins, which, sure, that
okay.
Sure. So what happens when you leave counterfactual white superiority trash like this laying around? Well, in the early 20th century, there were plenty of hands hungry for proof of white superiority, very eager to pick it up, as you can imagine. One such person was René Binet, which is a wonderful name, who later was one of the last of the SS to surrender in Berlin, defending the bunker with a very dead Hitler in it. He is a super important figure in neo-fascist Europe. He coined the term, which I hadn't heard before, from Brest to Vladivostok, meaning the idea to basically create out of nowhere Hyperborea from the coast of France all the way to the Pacific coast of Russia, everything north of that line, right? So, yeah, that's good. Another fine fellow that picked up the polar homeland bullshit and ran all the way to hell with it was Julius Evola, an Italian esoteric hyper-fascist and tremendously evil misogynist, pro-violence anti-Semite whose turgid writings have helped to inspire a whole new generation of European and Russian neo-fascists. In them, he refers to Hyperborea and uses the word boreal as a name for the superior white race, interchangeable with the very in vogue term Aryan. That his name is spelled almost the same as evil can't be too much of a coincidence. And this gets so silly. Another jolly good fellow that wanted to establish permanent residency in the non-existent white continent Hyperborea was a fancy Chilean monster boy called Miguel Joaquin del Carmen Serrano Fernandez, a.k.a. Miguel Serrano. He was an upper-class Chilean Germanophile who was pissed about Chile's neutrality during the Second World War and agitated for support of Hitler's Germany. Already a devotee of the occult, Serrano met a mysterious German immigrant called simply FK, who got him into a combination of astral projection, left-hand black magic, and Kundalini yoga. It's not even, we're not even there yet. And professed that there was a secret group of Aryan adepts hidden in the Himalayas, and they had summoned the spiritual super being Adolf Hitler, who they referred to as, oh boy, I'm going to kill this, Shuddhi Buddhishvababa, into existence on Earth to prevent the Kali Yuga, the final destructive cycle of all human life on Earth, according to Hinduism, and that FK claimed he could communicate with the Fuhrer on the astral plane. FK
Okay.
and Serrano, yeah.
You need to repeat the last 3 minutes or so because I think I just had a stroke.
Yes. You didn't know there was a Kundalini Yoga Hitler tie-in, did you?
I did
You
not
did not
see
see
that
that
coming.
coming.
Just know that there's a guy walking around who is Der Astralführer.
Well, I'm just about to demonstrate that. So FK and Serrano were early practitioners of a real movement called esoteric Hitlerism.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that I'm going to do a whole segment about another time. That's the natural heir of Blavatsky's esoteric fascism, and is an ongoing thing that, as I said, we'll discuss later. After the war, FK insisted that Hitler had survived and was living under the ice cap in Antarctica. So Serrano went looking for him.
Fuck it,
Oh,
why
my
not?
God. That's good.
This is all true. And sadly, he both didn't find Hitler and himself survived his journey, but this is even spookier, but did become the Chilean ambassador to India,
Oh, my God.
Austria, and
way.
most chillingly, the International Atomic Energy Agency.
Oh, my God.
He was very much a believer in the literal Hyperborean super race and the lost northern homeland, and believed until his death in 2009, that the extermination of the Jews was an incomplete mission.
Oh, my God.
Well,
Chile,
I mean,
what the
he
fuck?
is right. They did not completely exterminate the Jews, so
Yeah,
I
they
have to give
did-
him partial credit on that one.
They didn't quite hit their quota, did they?
I would love to just see the recap of his trip to, was it Antarctica or the Arctic?
Well, he wrote a book about it.
Oh, great.
He actually wrote a book. He wrote a book about all of that. And anyway, I've kind of a side note. There's apparently a book that covers a lot of this stuff and a lot of the esoteric Hitlerism that I've ordered called Black Sun. So I'm extremely interested to...
Wow.
You're going to be hearing some more garbage in the future, kids. Sorry about that. In episode 52, we had a good laugh at former Mormon and blue ribbon lunatic Rodney Clough and his hollow earth theory. He took some dumb observations of Edmund Halley, 18th century smart guy that the comet is named after, about the North Pole and a hollow planet, and folded the racist version of Hyperborea onto and into it, claiming a super race of white people who were 10 feet tall and lived 1,000 years, actually lived inside the Earth. And that's where the flying saucers the aliens gave the Nazis ended up at the end of the war, right? So, still following me? I hope not. It's not leading anywhere good. So, Rodney Clough is a clown and a joke and harmless to anyone but himself. But that wackadoo nugget about Nazis, just like some of the actual Nazis I named before, is what jerked my silly little story about Hyperborea from an ancient curiosity to a potential modern atrocity. The writings and beliefs of people like Blavatsky, Evola, Binet, and Serrano have caught on like crazy with modern esoteric neo-fascists worldwide, but most especially in the part of the world that believes itself to be Hyperborea, mostly Russia and Northern Europe. Most are kooks and knuckle draggers, but some are very powerful kooks and knuckle draggers, like Dutch parliamentarian Thierry Baudet, who talks about, who I think is still in office, who talks about wanting to seize and cleanse the boreal world of non-whites. Or Putin confidant Alexander Dugin, who is a big believer in white Russian supremacy and spouts the SS officer Benet's Hyperborean slogan, "From Brest to Vladivostok," menacingly. The European Christianist neo-pagan right is gaining a troubling amount of traction in European politics and is essentially in power in Russia. So from France to Hungary, from Italy to Italy, European white nationalists are very keen on the idea, whether symbolically or more troublingly, literally, that they were born out of a pretend lost continent the Greeks knew too little about the world to have made half a guess at, that is not at the North Pole nor under it, nor on any map, because the idea of sharing common humanity with black people or Jews is too terrifying for them to bear. That is maybe the most stupid thing I've ever had to write about for this show. And I did cryptozoology and David Icke. Yeah. And it's, you know, it's goddamn dangerous as it is absurd. This is an example of the inherent danger of stupid, irrational, superstitious beliefs. They're kind of like guns, right? Theoretically harmless if left alone, but capable of pretty incalculable damage in the hands of someone with bad intention or malice.
Right.
So
even just stupid.
Oh, just stupid, exactly.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but who was it that originally kind of made up this? Which Greek was it?
Herodotus, and they think that might even have come from that he might have been citing older sources. So
sure, but
potentially the 7th century BCE.
It doesn't sound like this, to his mind, was a master race. It sounded like they were kind of freakish, right? Like 10-foot tall white ghouls.
Yeah, like monsters.
Kind of happy-go-lucky.
So the Greeks were kind of all over the place with it, and it evolved over a few centuries into, there's tall white people up there somewhere, to they're happy all the time, the sun's always up, it's a land of milk and they thought the North Pole, or that where the North Pole is, was like a land of milk and honey, right? Mm-hmm. So they weren't freaks. They were. It's kind of easy to read them as superior in some way, right? Because of lifespan and life outcomes or whatever. But it's just garbage, right? It's complete garbage, and there are violent extremists who either 100% believe it's true, or just think it's it's like a swastika to them. It's an important symbol of their superiority. So
right. Well, It's too bad Denny's stole the slogan for Hyperborea, right? It's always sunny at Denny's. Got to come up with a new slogan.
That is something I did not look into for this segment, Doug. Thanks. Our Denny's Nazi tie-in. We're going to have to reconsider them as a sponsor at this point. I think
Moons over Hyperborea. It's
Moons over Berlin.
Oh, it's just it doesn't end, does it? The derp is so dumb and so deep, and then so fucking dangerous. Like, I thought this was, when you mentioned what you were doing earlier this week to me, I'm like, oh, that'll be fun. And now I'm not at all happy.
No,
Yeah.
I was the same
Then you
thing.
ruined our lives, Mark.
I'm like, can I just fucking once find something? It's like, oh, the racism. There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, racism and violent extremism. Found it.
It's we live our lives in an amusement park, but all of the rides end badly.
And they're all on fire.
All of the rides are missing the last 15 feet of track.
And end in a pile of burning books. So
Yeah.
there you go, kids. That's Hyperborea.
Don't believe in it.
Maybe when the European Union lets us back in, we can have a meet up there. So
Well, let's toss this one on the tectonic pile, eh?
Yeah,
one
exactly.
less continent.
Moving on. Uncle Mark, you know, there was a time in the world when we used to go to movies. I don't know if you remember that.
No, not ringing a bell.
You mean talkies?
Yeah. Well, and speaking of talkies, do you remember it used to be, even before our time, that you used to get a newsreel before the talkies,
That's right.
and that is how you got your non-daily paper news.
That's right. And a guy with a terrific voice would usually say something like, "Heretics in the news,"
That's right.
and underneath him would be like, "Dun dun 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 dun."
Yeah, there'd be a whole bunch of people marching through, and today Charles Lindbergh met the first heretics of the society. Blah blah blah. So I think, Doug, you need to put on your best that voice and take us through the heretics in the news.
Our
the
boys are
uncles.
going to give the Kaiser a good kick in the pants.
Let's get to that point. So, dear uncles, many of the subjects we cover on the show are long dead religions and long buried gods, but sometimes we talk about people or movements that are very much alive and continue to bugger the minds of our fellow humans in real time.
Yeah.
And although it's my firm desire that just by shining a light on this stupid shit, it would go away, unfortunately, what's dumb will never die, and several of these things we've talked about in the past continue, like a racist cold sore, to pop back up in the news or in popular culture from time to time. And so, in order to check in on the derp of the day, let's revisit my ongoing segment, Heretics in the News.
Dun, 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 dun.
So I want to make clear, I honestly had no intention of talking about any of this even just a couple days ago. In fact, I had a completely other segment in the works. But as I've said many times before, it seems that God is a fan of the show and that he's been on a bit of a meth binge lately.
Yeah.
Haven't we all?
And God, did you have any left?
I know. Where do you get it at this point?
My neighborhood. Come on down. I can hook you up. No problem.
So don't worry, dear listeners. I will simply push off my intended segment until next week. And I can promise you, it will be mediocre. So, first up, our country is in the throes of a long overdue and in all likelihood far too late to save us racial reckoning. One of the forms that this reckoning has taken is the toppling of statues of Confederate generals and other notable historical racists. And one would think that the recipients of one of history's worst ass-kickings, worse even than when the GoBots tried to topple the Transformers, would not be interested in memorializing that colossal loss, and one would be right. These ubiquitous statues of your Stonewalls Jackson, your Nathans Bedford Forrest, and your Jeffersons Davis are not intended to remind us of a proud and glorious history. They are 100% intended to remind our brothers and sisters of color that we did it once and we're going to fucking do it again. So, it is no small pleasure to watch these terrible totems topple, so let's take a quick look at the most recent Confederate monument to crumble into dust. Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III lost his primary bid for his old Republican seat in the Senate on Tuesday
Yay!
to one Tommy Tuberville. So,
Don't make up opponents. If you want to sound credible, you got to come up with better names than that.
for real, before we move on to bathe in the sweet elixir of schadenfreude of this humiliating loss, let's address one thing. Tommy Tuberville is as stupid as his name leads you to believe. And while he sounds like a harmless mascot of an Idaho Potato Festival, if he wins against Doug Jones in November, he will be as much, if not more, of a nightmare than the sentient Klan mask he has relegated to the dustbin of history.
Yeah.
We have, of course, talked about Sessions, this particularly well-groomed swamp elf, before in episodes 41 and 46. In the former episode, to talk about how Sessions was citing Romans 13 to try to breach the wall between church and state, and in the former episode to talk about his newly formed Religious Liberty Task Force. Remember the halcyon days when we thought that Jeff Sessions was the biggest threat to our democracy?
No, Jeff Sessions is no longer the worst attorney general in U.S. history.
Right?
Yeah.
Every time we need to be careful about making big pronouncements about how bad people are, because literally this is the administration of hold my beer.
Truly. So a quick reminder, a refresher on Jefferson Sessions. When Donald J. Trump was nothing but a speck in our telescopes, Jeff Sessions was easily the most racist, retrograde, and despicable man in the United States Senate. And that, my friends, is saying something.
Yeah.
The fact that he looked and acted like every racist Southern judge in every civil rights movie ever had actually relegated him to the fringes of the body he'd spent 20 years infecting. So it was perhaps no surprise that he was the very first senator to hitch his wagon to the still comical Trump campaign.
Yep. Which chewed him up and shit him out.
For real.
Yeah.
This early endorsement was only one of many nails in the coffin of American democracy, but it did land him the job he'd always wanted, Attorney General of the United States of America. Yep. One of the most blatantly racist creatures still drawing breath in 2016 was put in charge of all of our nation's law enforcement apparatuses. However, like Uncle Mark said, this did not last long, and before Sessions could even truly begin to enact his agenda, history and Donald Trump's malfeasance outpaced him. When Trump fired James Comey and Rob Rosenstein appointed Robert Mueller to investigate Trump and Russia, Sessions had no choice but to follow the law and precedent and recuse himself from the whole affair. Yeah, this was his first mistake.
Which is breathtaking. That is the only incidence of law-abidingness
I know.
in the entire administration in 3.5 years.
It was the first and last moment
exactly.
when someone was like, "Oh, we need to obey like even the most basic modicum of ethical rules here."
Yeah, and it cost him everything, right?
And that exactly that might explain what came next, where you see Donald Trump, spoiler alert, is a terrible person.
What?
And so I know. Believe it or not, I'm sorry to break this to you,
Are we
Dan.
sure about this?
Let me show you the past 3 years.
He correctly identified an elephant on a piece of paper.
You know what's funny is I for the shits and giggles, took that cognitive test right before we started recording. Just I had an extra minute, and I'm more embarrassed for my country than I was an hour ago.
Yeah.
So Trump has focused what is left of his brain on the lawful actions. The utter betrayal of Jeff Sessions, and has rewarded one of his perhaps most influential and consequential backers with a level of petty, vindictive mean girlness that is truly remarkable. Trump unceremoniously fired Sessions and has spent the subsequent year and change doing everything in his power to ruin him, and on Tuesday night he succeeded. Trump endorsed Tuberville, which helped him trounce Sessions 61 to 39%.
Wow.
In a final, pathetic Dixie death rattle, Sessions' final campaign ad had him donning a MAGA hat one last time in a desperate attempt to prove his utterly misplaced loyalty.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was pathetic.
Yeah.
This was as humiliating a defeat as could be imagined. And so, let us salute the latest Confederate soldier to meet the business end of a Union bayonet with the only song appropriate for such a solemn occasion, It's Raining Men by the Weather Girls, performed on the theremin by a colony of rabid bats. Next up, back in episode 102, we discussed the QAnon conspiracy theory. Yeah. If you haven't listened to that episode, or if you don't remember what QAnon is, it is basically the unified field theory of derp.
Yeah.
Take the flat earth conspiracy, the hollow earth conspiracy, the hollow moon conspiracy, the cliff notes of the protocols of the Elders of Zion, sprinkle in a little extra racism, some white supremacy and xenophobia, and why not, some esoteric Hitlerism.
Yeah, there you go.
And then put your head in a plastic bag for 7 minutes while blasting Ride of the Valkyries at full volume. There you go. Now you've got it.
On your dirt bike going as fast as you can.
Exactly.
But at very least, it's secret knowledge that you can have and that they, the stupid liberals, don't have, and you can pwn them all day long with it.
Then that is exactly right. And it has, as conspiracies do, morphed a bit since we discussed it back in September of last year, mostly to somehow try and explain how Q, the deep state mole that was funneling secret and important information to his followers, somehow failed to mention the coming of the greatest viral pandemic since the Spanish flu that was unleashed by China, or by us, or by Iran, or not, or maybe.
I think it was the Clintons, wasn't it?
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
It was Hillary. It will not surprise you to know that mask mandates are part of the global communist, Jewish, atheist, Muslim, Kardashian conspiracy to literally muzzle patriotic Americans and make them rebreathe their precious bodily fluids and weaken their minds by low-level carbon dioxide poisoning.
Well, wait a minute. At this point, don't we have to back the Kardashians out of it since Yeezy is running for president?
That's how deep it goes, Mark.
Yeah.
You know what? The deep state's already gotten to him. He already bailed on that.
Well, but he's trying again.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he was trying to get on the ballot in North Carolina.
Good.
Oh, God.
Good.
So Trump, by steadfastly refusing to wear a mask, was proving to Q followers that he was on their side and wasn't going to fall for the liberal trick. The fact that he did wear a mask the other day is a sign. Okay, it was a sign that, okay, he knew about the conspiracy and was, okay, wait. His mask was assigned to someone about something. Hold on. Okay, I got this. Trump's mask was black, like the Black Watch in Game of Thrones, the 8th season of which was terrible. This is the 8th half year of the Trump's first term. Washington was the first president. He cut down a cherry tree. Cherries are red. And that's why fire trucks are red, because they're always rushing around. We are through the looking glass here, people. and I mean,
Doug suddenly finds himself being sworn in as a member of Congress. Wait, what? How did this happen?
Yeah. You could be a cabinet member without your against your will if you're not careful, Doug.
Yeah.
Truthfully. All right, so the theory was bouncing around on right-wing Reddit and then started appearing on signs and T-shirts at Trump rallies. Trump himself appeared to toss out a few bones to this most deranged end of a deranged party, mostly by flirting with the number 17, because Q is the 17th letter of the alphabet. I know.
Oh, did he really just say something about 17 just to
it was, okay,
He's
so...
used it a few times. He's put, like, as just randomly, the 17 angry Democrats.
Yes, there were 13 Democrats that he was targeting that were investigating him. And in the midst of this whole QAnon bullshit, he changed that to 17.
Yeah. I bet he didn't have anything to do with that.
No.
That's all Stephen Miller.
It's totally Stephen Miller.
He's too goddamn stupid to know.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. He knows what an elephant looks like. Do I have to keep saying this?
Like all other conspiracies, this one just won't go away and has of late seen a very bizarre resurgence. Firstly, with several YouTube videos making the rounds of various and sundry white people taking what they are calling the Digital Soldier's Pledge. The most famous of these videos is of former National Security Advisor and 3-star General Michael Flynn, who recently avoided punishment for his convictions for lying to the FBI by employing the clever tactic of being rich and white.
Yeah, that's a good one.
In the video.
You should all do that.
When it ain't broke.
Problem
in
solved.
The video, yeah, presumably filmed in his backyard, Flynn and 5 middle-aged friends, decked out in their best tactical sweatshirts and shorts, raise their right hands and recite the oath, which reads as follows. Quote, I, insert idiot name here, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of that office of which I am about to enter. So help me God. Where we go one, we go all.
Oh, my God. No.
So if that sounds familiar, it is because, with one notable exception, it is the oath that all senators, representatives, many federal workers, and members of the military take upon entering service. The one exception is, of course, where we go one, we go all, which is not just the slogan from the 1996 homoerotic coming-of-age movie White Squall, which is the only reason that Uncle Mark...
It's true, isn't it?
It is true.
God.
And it's the only reason that Uncle Mark still owns a VCR. But it's also a rallying cry for QAnon.
One of the reasons.
It's usually represented by its acronym WWGOWGA or WGWA. Should it be troubling that former National Security Advisor and 3-star General is espousing this nonsense? Yeah, it should.
This guy, like, before he basically colluded with the Russians to cheat, this guy had access to, or everything all of our spy satellites are seeing, every piece of intelligence. You know, this guy had top security clearance, and he's fallen for this fucking gobbledygook. It's unbelievable.
That's right.
Or totally, actually 100% believable right now.
I know, exactly.
Yeah.
The other incident that kind of had a resurgence for QAnon was just the other day While giving one of his signature unhinged advertisements for hydroxychloroquine, White House trade advisor Peter Navarro appeared to have on a QAnon pin.
Oh, God.
Well, it's hard to tell if this was an actual QAnon pin. It sure looks like one, and Navarro and team are in no hurry to deny it. Wow. The QAnon pin is just a standard U.S. flag pin, but with a gold Q in the middle. If you look carefully, you will see this pin around the president. People are wearing this pin in the White House and around the White House, and in particular in the crop of QAnon-believing candidates that have won primaries in Colorado, Georgia, Oregon, and California.
Do you think that they're believing, or do you think that they're just piling on a bandwagon to dog whistle to people?
I think they're believing.
If you listen to them when they talk about it, it's hard not to believe that they believe. God, you know what I mean?
Damn it.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
If they don't believe it, they're good at faking it.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to say, as this election nears and things get worse in our country, you are going to see a whole lot more Q posters and signs and Q pins. Please don't be surprised to see these pins on politicians and, most alarmingly, on police and soldiers.
Yeah.
So, hopefully when the election's over and if it goes the right direction, there'll be a lot of people looking to kind of find their way out of this. But incidentally, what do you call a group of people trying to leave QAnon?
I don't know.
I don't either. Is it QAnon-anon? On June 4th of this year, the New York Times had a podcast, their daily podcast, which featured a woman who found her way out of this conspiracy, and it's pretty fascinating. It's worth a listen.
I heard that. It's pretty interesting.
And speaking of nutball conspiracies and the dopes who fall for them, Ammon Bundy. You might remember...
Local favorite.
You might remember our old friend Ammon Bundy and his father Cliven from episode 144, where we talked about their repeated standoffs with the federal government and how they kept getting away with it. Well, their ears must have been burning, because just like another addition to the Fast and Furious franchise, they're back and they're stupid. It seems that too many news cycles had passed without another installment of the Bunkerville Hillbillies, so Ammon decided to literally burst into the scene. And where was the latest venue for Ammon's never-ending crusade for freedom or liberty or rare birds or who the fuck knows? It turns out that Ammon decided to crash a Southwest District health meeting in Caldwell, Idaho.
What? He's nowhere near Idaho, right?
He's and Caldwell is north of Boise. So those of us in the West know that's pretty far up Idaho. Yeah. And Idaho is a big, tall, skinny state.
The dirty Canada-touching state.
That's right. Yeah. So what was Bundy and several of his posse doing in Caldwell? I don't fucking know. Why was Michael Caine in Jaws 4: The Revenge? It's best not to think about it too much and just accept it.
Was there 4?
Jaws 4, by the way, was the first movie to use the tagline, "This time it's personal."
No.
I remember that.
Yeah, it's true.
I also remember, just as a way of explaining, I do remember Michael Caine once released an acting for film sort of little video, and on it, I think that's where he said, "I will take any acting job that you pay me $1 million for."
Did he really?
Yeah.
If you have not seen Jaws 4: The Revenge, don't.
Is that the one where Roy Scheider holds up the electrical cable at the end and Jaws bites it?
No, Mark. That's Jaws 2. Jaws 4 is where his wife stabs Jaws in the chest with a boat. It's true.
Hey, was Jaws okay?
Mr. Jaws? All right.
So I'm worried about Mrs. Jaws.
The Caldwell Health Department was meeting to discuss a possible mask mandate, which is, of course, catnip to types like Bundy,
right?
Who, like their QAnon brethren, see having to wear masks as exactly the same as chattel slavery.
Yeah, well, it's crazy that in northern-ish Idaho, that you could even call that meeting without just the sound of gunfire coming from that.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And when I say they believe that masks are the same as slavery, for real, they actually believe that.
For real. And the Holocaust.
That's the verbiage that they use.
That's yep. Mm-hmm. So the health department had already instituted a mask mandate inside their own building because they're, a health department.
Right.
Which became the source of the confrontation as Bundy and several of his determined derpers demanded entry into the building while refusing to put on masks. Video of the incident was posted online, and in it you can see Bundy and several other men pushing, shoving, and threatening these poor, scared health department workers. The standoff goes on for nearly half an hour, with several instances of assault by Bundy and crew before the health department canceled the meeting to avoid violence.
Those brave patriots.
I know, right? And of course, Bundy had the ubiquitous Constitution poking out of his pocket. The police were called, but once again, nobody was arrested, meaning that this will not be the last time Bundy or someone associated with him assaults some innocent person. So when it happens...
They're white. What are they supposed to... What are they going to do, arrest them? Come on.
So when that happens, inevitably, you can bet on two things. We'll talk about it on this show, and next time, it's personal.
Well, you have to say it as Michael Caine.
Michael Caine.
Next time, it's personal. How'd I do, Dan?
I'm gonna give you a B minus.
You're feeling generous today.
So that's it. That's a roundup of heretics in the news for this July 2020.
Feels great. Feels good.
Won't be the last one.
Everything is,
We're all about it. We're all about it. Thanks for that, Uncle Doug. Shall we move on?
Let's do it.
Oh, please.
All right, gentlemen. We do this thing every week. We're not sure what it is, but we talk into the void, and then other people apparently somehow manage to pick it up. It's a series of tubes. I don't know how it works.
I just got to jump in here. I have a worry. I think we might have done a bad.
Uh-oh.
Did we misgender Jaws? Do we know Jaws is a man, a man shark?
That's a great question.
You know what? Jaws is a listener. Write into us. Let us know. From now on, we're going to use they.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway.
Sorry, that just was burning me up.
Thank God you cleared that up. So important. So important.
Point of shark order.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Shark law.
Anywho, some of our nieces, nephews, and nibblings have decided that they want to help us out.
Yeah.
And they're going to give us a little bit of their money. So we owe some thank yous to some folk, and let's give them now. Thanks so much to Breton, Olivia, Devin, Brandon, to this one has a the. To Thomas, the political... Wait, oh, shoot, it went away. The political Martian. Thomas, the political Martian. Thank you so much. We have a couple of new... Before, we've got a saint and a heaven we got to get to. But before we divvy those out, we have a new thing, which is that people can give us, not just on Patreon, but they can give us a one-time donation or even sign up to be a monthly contributor on our PayPal thing. We've got a new button on the website. And so we owe thanks to Tobias for becoming a monthly patron on PayPal.
Tack Tobias, fy fan. He's Swedish. I'm having a Swedish moment here.
Thank you very much. Anyway, the only full sentence that I know in Swedish I shouldn't say. It's dirty.
Well, only Tobias will know.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Anywho, thanks so much to you. And now we have a Uncle Doug. I want you to give a saint. It is a missed saint. Unfortunately, Patreon has changed how they show me what's happening on the site.
So we missed a saint for a wonderful listener and friend, Hal, out of a weird part of the Mormon spectrum. We don't have to get into it.
Yeah, so sorry about that. And Uncle Doug, who is Hal's saint?
Okay, Hal, your saint, and apologies for having missed you before, but your saint still applies.
So the saint is retroactive.
It's retroactive.
Yes. Yeah,
all the way
and this saint was your saint since the moment that you set it up. So,
it could even go into past lives. Who knows? But your saint is Saint Flippity Flappicus, the redundant, of New Brunswick, Canada.
Oh, beautiful.
Saint Flippity is the patron saint of action movie sequels that star a different lead actor.
Okay, good one.
The porridge family of foods, so oatmeal, grits, anything you eat with a large wooden spoon.
Your cream of wheats, whatever.
Your borschts, anything you eat with a big old wooden spoon.
I don't know if a borscht counts with that.
Borscht. That definitely does not count.
And finally, he's the patron saint of Ned Beatty lookalikes.
How about that?
Yeah.
Great.
How about
that?
that?
Warren is so overdone. It's the Neds that you want to look out for.
Hal, I'm sure you agree with me that was totally worth the wait.
Yeah, 100%. That was a classic right there. Can't go wrong with that. And Uncle Mark.
Yes.
There's one other thing. We missed another thing.
Yes.
Or we almost missed. I'm not sure. Here's the thing. I don't know. We're just playing catch up here. If we missed you guys, if any of you are listening and we missed a thing,
don't hesitate to give us a shout. Just send us an email and we will.
Don't
make sure
hesitate. I'm still trying to sort out a new system with Patreon because it's a bit of a mess. So I apologize.
This podcast is nothing more than a weekly broadcast of all the things we're not good at.
Exactly.
Yeah. So please, if we missed you, we love you. We didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah. Indeed. But Uncle Mark, please take it away. You have, if I'm not mistaken, a heaven for someone.
Yes, I do, and it's a good one, and you're going to love this. So this is for our dear friend Tacit, who's been a listener, I think, since the very beginning, and a patron for a long time, who did what all good patrons do and increase their patronage to the heaven level. So it is an honor to finally get to assign you, Tacit, your forever destination in the great beyond, following your untimely but glorious death after you're taken out by a drone owned by Sun Records Company in Memphis after you rammed the gates of Graceland on Christmas Eve in the stolen Oscar Mayer Wienermobile for reasons that will haunt your loved ones for the rest of their lives.
Amen.
I'm pretty sure you almost said Oscar Wilde Wiener.
Oscar Wilde, yeah, that's also works.
It's a different thing, but yeah.
Upon your entering the great silence, you pass through space and time until you hear a faint sound. And pretty soon you can make out a staccato rhythm and a very distinct rapid guitar pluck. Is it familiar, maybe? To your surprise, it is vaguely familiar because it is the 1979 new wave cover of the Beatles' classic Money, brackets, That's What I Want, end brackets, by the Flying Lizards. Catchy, almost robotic in its repetitiveness. Huh, that's odd. But you see, Tacit, you've spent a lifetime serving and educating others. And like all of us, there have been plenty of times when you weren't sure where you were going to get your next Vegemite sandwich or how you were ever going to get another shrimp on your repossessed Barbie. So, as you descend through some peculiar clouds, your feet plant firmly upon a beautiful but extremely odd landscape. You, Tacit, are now and forever in money heaven. That's
Something
right, Tacit.
tells me, like, it sounds good. Something tells me it's going to go bad, though.
There's no we've established no pattern of that in these.
That's true.
Yeah. So that's right, Tacit. After a lifetime of pinching pennies and tightening the old belt, you have landed in a numismatic Narnia, a fully fungible fantasy of luscious liquidity and monetary majesty you could not have dreamed of in life. Scrooge McDuck would have to be a channel swimmer just to get across the rivers of rands, the streams of shillings, the lakes of lira, and the estuaries of euros. The vista is dazzlingly constructed. There's mansions of Mauritanian rupees, boulevards of Bolivianos, temples of Transnistrian rubles, and fiduciary fountains foaming with Falkland Island pounds. The cash-intensive clouds of Croatian kuna are cascading centavos and centimos, as they do every afternoon to cool the heat bathing the land from the sun of blazing but remarkably stable Swiss francs high in the gorgeous sky of beautiful blue Brazilian 100-real banknotes. The constant, fairly loud repetition of the highly repetitive Flying Lizard song barely makes a dent in your reverie in taking this all in. The angels are just flying ATMs. The bushes bloom with bearer bonds. The foliage is coinage, and the flowers have limitless purchasing powers. Phew! That song just keeps going, doesn't it? Well, that aside, you can't believe your luck in landing in this high-yield heaven. And you're right. It is nice, for sure, but your housing is provided. It's a very nice hacienda made of Hungarian fornits down by the forest of Fijian dollars. And you don't eat or drink anymore because dead. And you wear the same damp clothes every day, a very fine tunic of Tuvaluan dollars and sandals of Somaliland shillings with a fine belt of Bangladeshi pulas. So what is there to spend this infinity of reinvestable riches on, Tacit? Well, nothing. It's all useless. I mean, it's not totally useless since the entire universe is made out of it. But there are no stores, no debts, not even the trifling luxury of retail therapy. It's just a weird world made of money that serves no other purpose. And quote, any, quote, religious heaven, just like the absurdist eternal pleasure prisons we concoct for a fee, are nothing more than poorly thought out prisons and an eternal case of metaphysical blue balls. So get some exercise doing the Scrooge McDuck backstroke in the Gulf of Guatemalan Quetzals, because money can't buy you happiness, at least not on that side of this veil of tears. But at very least, you'll always have that song, which is surely something of real value. So enjoy a flush forever, eternally in the black tacit, in your money heaven, from which there is no respite and no escape.
Woo!
Yeah.
Why do people give us money? I don't understand.
I don't know. It's a fool's errand, if you ask me.
I sent poor Michael Eric to a Klan rally last week for no fucking reason, and you just
yeah, well,
damn.
You know,
this
when
poor
I was
woman.
when I was in Colombia about a year ago, it was funny because they actually have like street vendors have bits of clothing that are made from devalued Venezuelan bolivars.
Oh
so,
my God. So there you go.
There you go. It's
Pennies
a real
from
thing.
heaven. Pennies from heaven, motherfuckers.
That's right. Well, enjoy that, and thank all of you so much for your patronage. If other people would like to become a patron, it's so easy. You just go to howtoheretic.com. That's a website. You know how to make those work.
Yeah.
You click on the support us thing. It gives you the option. You go to the Patreon. You go to the PayPal, and boom, you're there. You're giving us money. It's so simple.
Put all your Transnistrian rubles right into the gap in the machine.
Yeah.
And if you can't do that, give us 5 stars. It actually really, really helps, because it helps other people find us. So light our night sky, and let's move on. Uncle Doug.
Hello.
There is a time and a place for everything. And there's a time and a place for everyone. As somebody's British parent, I can't remember who, said, there's a lid for every pot. Right? Meaning there's somebody out there for all of us. And I think that's a hopeful message. And I don't know where I'm going with this. Dan, can you rescue me from this?
There's a time to every purpose under heaven.
Yes, and a chicken in every pot that has a lid. I
That's.
think I brought it all home. Tied
I
it all
think you
up.
did.
Yeah.
All right. That was a great segment. Let's move on.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. No, listen. Obviously, you're new to this whole gig. Clearly, 'cause,
Every day I'm new to this gig, yes.
that was ridiculous. But unlike you neophytes, you newborns to the podosphere, I've been podcasting for a while. Like, since back in the days where every time I told someone I had a podcast, I had to explain what that was. And my mom still calls it a blog. As a matter of fact, Thank God I'm Atheist released our 450th weekly episode this last weekend.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So that's narrowing in on 9 years that we've been doing this thing. That is not small shakes.
9 years.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. Well, congrats to
literally
you and Francois.
That's literally the longest I've ever held a job of any kind. So that's kind of funny.
Job.
Right. Well, listen,
A hand job is still a job, so I guess a podcast is too. So
yeah, exactly. When you put something out into the world for that long, even something as silly and stupid as what I end up putting out, you start to know where you stand among your peers. Ha! Take that, other podcasters. They hate it when I say I'm their peer. I don't really know why. Anyway, what seems to have always stood out about TGIA, the feedback that we have consistently gotten from day one is that we're the nice guys of atheist podcasting, which is funny because we're pretty merciless when it comes to tearing into religious stupidity. But what we rarely do is rage.
I was going to say, have you listened to other atheist podcasts? I mean,
Right.
It's a relative scale.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, raging is sort of one of the big hallmarks of atheism-themed podcasting. Mm-hmm. Not that I believe the stereotype that atheists are more angry than everybody else. We aren't. There's actually science to prove it.
Yeah.
But there's also science to prove that even atheists think they're more angry than the rest of the world, which is interesting. So let's all leave that stereotype in the dust from here on in. But when we atheists talk about the subject of atheism and religion, Well, there's a lot in that topic that is worthy of some anger. So it's no wonder that that's what so many shows do. I think that's natural. It's just not what TGIA has always been about. Now, one of the big outcomes of this, of us being these nice guys, is that we have become a haven for people who are new to non-belief. People who have left their religion are taking their first baby steps into the undiscovered country of nihilistic, lawless decadence that we call atheism. And it can be a tender time for them. So when they fire up their pod blaster of choice and tentatively search the word atheism, it can be a bit of a shock when they find themselves bombarded by vitriol or swimming in Dawkins and Hitchens' deep cuts with references that are so inside baseball that they feel they couldn't possibly catch up.
Yeah.
So when they find us, TGIA, a couple of doofuses just trying to make sense of the madness in the world, they feel a little less intimidated. But the truth is that TGIA was never designed to be that for people. It was just a side effect of who we were and how we structured our show. So, Uncle Mark,
Yes.
when you and I started to talk about doing a new podcast and asked ourselves what hole there is to fill in the atheist podcasting world, after you vetoed my Best Boobs of Atheism review idea.
Well, it's not totally off the table.
Okay.
Yeah,
But I mean,
it's not totally
it wasn't our first choice. And then I
just feel like I'd be a little bit at a deficit, but I'll catch up.
Well,
Right, well, we
it's
didn't have-
obviously either me or Eli.
It's fuck. It's Eli. God damn it! Now we don't have to do it.
Well, okay, that's true. The fur adds so much. Anyway, after you vetoed that idea and I nixed your atheist bike trails of Sweden deep dive, we landed on trying to create. Look, it's just that's where I fall short.
Well, there's a lot of good boobs on those trails, so
That's a good point.
maybe there's some synergy here.
Maybe we've got a combination thing coming up. Okay, look for our new show coming out in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Anyway, what we landed on was trying to create something for new atheists.
Yeah.
We thought, look, let's custom build a space where people who are fresh out of religion will feel welcomed and heard and seen. We can even try to give them some tools to be happier in their new lives as non-believers. Let's provide a soft landing for these fledgling little birds. And that's how the How to Heretic was born.
That is literally the true.
It is.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. The number of religiously affiliated people in this country is falling and fast. According to Pew, in the last 10 years, the number of U.S. adults who identify as Christian has fallen from 77% to 65%.
How much of that is just the COVID killing religious people?
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I don't know. These are pre-COVID numbers. The post-COVID numbers are just going to blow our minds.
Yes.
The number who are unaffiliated has risen from 17% to 26%. That's about 30 million new nuns in a decade.
Wow.
That's almost a whole Canada of nuns.
That is almost a whole Canada of nuns.
By the way, my new band, Canada of Nuns, will be dropping our first album, Bike Trail Deep Dive, in August, so look for that. But of that 26%, only 4% are willing to use the word atheist when describing themselves.
Yeah.
And only 5% are willing to say agnostic. Most of them probably are atheists and agnostics, but they won't use those words. And that's due in no small part to the fact that atheists have been systematically demonized in our society for, ever. We've been demonized forever. We are a big, scary bogeyman that clergy have been terrorizing their congregations with since time immemorial. There's nothing we can really do about that. But there's another reason why people don't want to be associated with atheism, and it's a little more distressing to me. And that is that we have never learned the very first lesson that every successful new church has learned, which is how to make new people feel welcome, included, and safe. Mind you,
on your way to their wallet.
Right, exactly. And those churches have some distinct advantages over us. They're willing to use some pretty potent mind control techniques that we don't and shouldn't use.
Yeah.
and they have easy answers to questions that we have no answers to, or if we have answers, they're huge and complex and really difficult to understand.
Yeah.
And like idiots, we're honest about that. But even with all of their advantages, there's no reason we can't do as good a job as churches at welcoming these sweet new baby butterflies into our flutter. Now, I don't mean to condescend. These are mostly adults we're talking about, but make no mistake, and I'm sure many of our listeners can relate to this, for many people, leaving religion isn't just a change of perspective or philosophy. It's not just a matter of, I believe some different things now. It is a nuclear blast.
Yeah.
It changes everything.
Yeah.
So when I talk about fledgling little birds or baby butterflies, I'm talking about people, regardless of age, who in many ways are starting entirely from scratch. So for so many of these people, leaving religion means building a completely new worldview from the ground up. That their whole lives, their entire sense of what humans are, why they do what they do, and what their lives are supposed to be about, come from their religious tradition. Their concepts of morality and ethics, their understanding of fairness, and their place in the universe are all upended the second they admit to themselves that they no longer subscribe to religion. These are core-level identity issues. We're not just talking about what these people believe, we're talking about who they are. And suddenly, they're no longer sure about that. That can be a terrifying abyss to gaze into.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about worldview. Leaving religion also is a social earthquake a lot of the time. So for so many people, they find themselves suddenly, their friends, their family, the people they thought they could count on no matter what, abandon them. Their support system, their whole community, even their beloved traditions and customs, those can all come tumbling down. Add to that many people live in areas where nobody is allowed to not be religious, where they've never even met someone who's an out-of-the-closet atheist, and the sense of isolation and devastation can become unbearable. So, what can we do for these poor souls? As people who have been through this ourselves, or at least are aware of some of what they're going through, I think it's up to us to figure out how to roll out the welcome mat. How to bring them gently into the fold and show them that there's happiness and fulfillment on the other side of the religious veil, despite what they might have been told their whole lives. So, I've decided to put together some completely non-scientific, but hopefully useful thoughts on what we as a community should and shouldn't be doing when we welcome new non-believers into their new, better world. Some do's and don'ts, if you will.
All right.
And since people learn,
If
since
you
some
say
people
we're going
learn,
to waive the initiation fee, I'm hanging up the phone.
okay, well, just hold on to your butt for a second.
All right.
But I didn't want to, some people learn better visually, so I wanted to set up a visual aid. It's something that I think would be, if what I'm talking about is something that I think would be a good thing, I want you to imagine a donut, because donuts are welcoming. Everybody loves donuts. If it's something that might be less good, I want you to imagine the poop emoji. So, if it's do not, then it's a do-do. But if it's a do-do, then it's a donut. Got it? Do-do, do not. Donut, do-do. Clear?
I
think
need a
that's
helpful
clear.
mnemonic to help me.
Hold on. I've just got my yarn and thumbtacks. Okay.
All right, great. Let's move on. So, and you guys feel free to add to this list. I'm just sort of throwing shit out.
Yeah.
And we'll start with a donut. So I'll abandon the donut do-do thing. I'm sorry. I was dumb. Do remember that they are all new to all of this and just starting the process of untangling their own thoughts, feelings, and ideas from the ones that they were indoctrinated with. Do not expect them to get everything right all at once. Things like, things are likely to be a jumble for a bit. We can only process so much at a time. Maybe they've figured out that they don't believe in God, but haven't yet wrapped their head around how evolution could possibly be real. This is a good time to be gentle. Do keep in mind that these are people with feelings, not computers who need to be reprogrammed. Letting go of deeply internalized dogma is difficult and often traumatic. in my opinion, and I don't know if you guys will agree with me on this, I think it's more important to let them know they're safe than to make sure that they're able to pass an AP philosophy test.
Oh my God! Like, look, it's like you were saying earlier. You know, and we've said this on other shows too, Dan, is when you unplug from, especially a high stakes religion, you know, high demand religion like the one we came from.
Right.
You unplug all that, where all the thinking's done for you, all the answers are there, the positions about political and social and moral, quote unquote, moral issues are made for you. When you unplug all that, well, you have to fucking start over.
Yeah.
Right? So you cannot expect people to know the process of evolution via natural selection on day 2. Right?
Yeah.
You can't expect them to have read everything Bertrand Russell wrote on day 3. Just, you pump the brakes, give people space.
I mean, I remember I left religion, and what's interesting is I left religion in part because I had gay friends who had clearly tried not to be gay, and it didn't work, and I just couldn't square that with what I had been taught about gay people from the church.
Right.
Does that mean that I was instantly non-homophobic when I left the church?
Right.
No. It was a fucking process. I had to go through some shit to actually, like, coax my brain into accepting gayness as an okay thing. So it's all a process. We're not going to get there. Nobody gets there right away.
Yeah.
Well, and being overly dogmatic and hostile towards those that don't share that dogmatism, that's their thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not our thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, rather
Exactly.
than hitting somebody over the head with you know, a gap in their knowledge and embarrassing them and making them feel stupid, maybe kindly point them in a direction where they might find the information. Right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, I
you know,
find embarrassing people unnecessarily is one of, it's such a bullying tactic. I hate it so much. I think some people deserve to be embarrassed often and as, and loudly, but, people trying to find their way, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
That's why we call ourselves uncles, right? We're supposed to be protecting and kind and generous of spirit, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Right? That's what everyone
we
should be.
fail at that plenty, but that's what we're supposed to be.
Shut up, Dan.
With that in mind, because to me the concept, a lot of this, people leaving religion for the first time kind of go through a second adolescence. Like there's this, everything's new, they don't understand the world anymore sort of thing. So one of my do nots is do not be surprised if they become a little obnoxious for a while.
Yeah.
And also don't sweat it. I remember having long, deep conversations with one friend just out of religion, and then 2 days later, hearing her proudly parrot my exact words to somebody else as though she had invented the concepts. No sense that an attribution might be in order, just a philosopher explaining her new genius theory to everyone. There's an interesting sense of sort of know-it-allness that comes with this territory. Any listeners to Thank God I'm Atheist will remember a couple weeks ago there was an article in the Salt Lake Tribune by a Utah author named Meta Harrison. She recently left the Mormon Church and decided to write an op-ed about how lame other ex-Mormons can be.
I heard you guys do this on TGI. It's horrendous.
It was so stupid.
Yeah.
It was, she's talking about how ex-Mormons are just as dogmatic as the members of their former church. It was just...
And everybody demands that I drink immediately, and everybody demands
yeah.
I try drugs, and it's like, you're lying.
Yeah, that's not true.
That's a lie.
Everything she wrote had that new non-believer smell to it.
Uh-huh.
She had clearly sat in on some ex-Mormon meetups and was uncomfortable with how stridently they were now opposed to their former religion. She hadn't yet processed everything that they had. And of course they probably made no effort to ease her in, and she interpreted that as them expecting her to jump straight into the deep end of the pool, which may have actually been the case.
Right, and so that's kind of unfortunate, and I think that
Yeah.
one thing that we need to recognize, and you've touched on this in several ways, Dan, as atheist elders, if that's a thing, is that people are going through something very similar to the stages of grief.
I was just thinking that.
Right? That this is a huge life transition. It's huge. And
Yeah.
and so unfortunately, she's in some stage of grief. She just happened to kind of really publicly make an ass out of herself in whatever that stage is.
Well, she's like, I would say it's similar to, she's in denial and they're in anger.
Right.
Like they're moving through these things. She's so yeah, like they're at a different stage than she is, and I was for not a long time, but many years, definitely stuck in the anger state, and I was more strident than maybe I needed to be with people who were still in or just finding their way out, but it's part of the process.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's an interesting point because, yeah, if we look at that model, that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross model of grief,
yeah,
most people make, by the time they're listening to a podcast or trying to join a group, they've made it through the denial stage and they are in either anger or what was the next one?
But bargaining comes somewhere in there, right?
Anger. Oh, it's like anger or depression is, I think, the next one along. So we need to be gentle with these people. They are, they're in a rough moment.
Totally.
We're catching them in either anger or depression. That's not easy.
Right. And I think, and here's the thing I want to say about anger is Doug says, he's moved through the anger. I don't know that I entirely have. Right.
Well,
it used to
you can
consume
still
me though.
Right.
You can still be angry, but not be in the anger phase.
Right. And
because there's plenty that makes me angry, but I'm not an angry person. I'm not in the phase of my processing of religion that is anger.
yeah.
I just, you can make me mad if, Jeff Sessions or, somebody pulls some bullshit. It'll upset
but
me.
We're talking about kind of a resting state of anger rather than what you are having, which is, oh, that made me mad because that was a stupid thing for that, situational anger.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about
exactly.
kind of the clinical stage of being an angry person for a while. And what I want to say about that is, we'll just take the Mormonism thing for one example. Is there's really an insistence in Mormonism that you are not entitled to be angry.
Right.
That there's something wrong with you, that it's a failure of spiritual or personal failure of some kind. So when you leave it, you're taunted by other Mormons. Oh, you're just angry. Oh, you're just saying, well, of course I'm fucking angry.
Right.
I was betrayed by everyone in my life. Everybody participated in this lie. So if you are in the anger phase, then I think don't let people tell you that. It's okay. You should be angry if there's something wrong with you if you're not angry. That people in your life who should have done their due diligence, your fucking parents and your elders, didn't, and they read you into this balderdash that they should know better by now. The information's out there. So it's a long way of saying you're entitled to your anger. I am way through my raging phase, which was a long time, because there were lots of failures of family in addition to just the religion one, and they were hard to tease apart. But I've learned to dance with it. Where the anger used to be so controlling and so consuming, I've got control of it. But I still find it motivating. It's part of why I press record every week on this show, is to kind of, help people through that period. But it is a motivating feeling. It is a motivating part of life.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair. And it does lead me to my next do. For those of us who are trying to welcome people into the world of non-belief, which is do meet people where they are.
Right.
If they say something that you think is silly or egregious, don't jump down their throat about it or mock them or whatever. Maybe ask them about it. Take a page from street epistemology and hit them with the old Socratic method. Keep it light, gentle, and playful. Remember that many people newly out of religion haven't ever been taught how to think critically. It's totally new to them. Mm-hmm. And we do them a much bigger favor to teach them how to think than what to think. Mm. So, with that in mind, I would say do not be dogmatic about what non-believers believe. We are not a monolith. The person you're talking to may be new to godlessness, but they're still a smart person. Just because they haven't read all the literature that you have doesn't mean that you're right and they're wrong. They may have an interesting perspective. And remember that we heathens don't all believe the same things. There are liberal humanists and conservative humanists. There are valid disagreements between thinking non-believers about things like euthanasia or capital punishment. There are atheists who oppose abortion. There are even good, thoughtful, educated atheists who think that Star Wars prequels are acceptable entertainment.
Nope. I'm sorry. We have reached
I knew that
an
would get you,
impasse.
Doug. Look, as disgusting a notion as that is, if we want our tent to be big and our movement to be welcoming, we have to make room for even those prequel-loving monsters. So,
Yeah, and look, there are. Well, I don't know about them, but speaking of monsters, look, there are terrible atheists. There are terrible people who are atheists.
Yeah.
And there is a far fringe racist right of atheism, and
right.
I share.
And we should be clear. I'm not saying that we should that we should tolerate hate speech,
no,
or anything like that. I'm not saying that you have just because someone's a new atheist means that you have to accept unacceptable thinking.
Right.
Yeah,
So that's one of the dangers, I think, of people coming out of one orthodoxy and kind of needing the methadone of another, is those rabbit holes lie out there. Doug was talking about QAnon and stuff, and so I think it's kind of incumbent on those of us that are perhaps not belligerent, violent, anti-democratic, misogynist, racist atheists to help to offer a place where that kind of rhetoric is not acceptable, and really lean heavily on the humanism and the pluralism that is one of the beautiful gifts that skeptical thought and critical thought has given the world, right?
Yeah, so what I was trying to say in that is that it becomes actually more powerful. Our message of like anti-hate becomes more powerful if you direct it at things like racism, LGBT thought, that sort of thing, and don't direct it at things that don't deserve it, like they have a different viewpoint on economics or whatever.
Sure.
So that's kind of where it's something to be teased out. But I think that the more welcoming, the more open-minded we can be to them just sort of having whatever their opinions are, and you don't have to agree with them by any means.
Right.
But I'm just saying there are non-believers who think that atheists. I've seen so many atheists in groups yell at some other atheist because they don't buy into the same sort of dogmatic ideas about atheism that they have.
Yeah, the classic scene.
I don't think we need to be that dogmatic.
That classic scene from Life of Brian applies to atheists as well, perhaps more so. Where it's we're not the Judean people's front, we're the people's front of Judea. I think, and to your point, Uncle Mark, being an atheist is not inherently virtuous.
Right.
Right.
Some people, people can believe all kinds of terrible things and not believe in God. Yeah. And that's, that is not only plausible, not only possible, it's common.
Yeah.
And,
totally.
I think a lot of us and the people listening to our show and our community, we're atheists because we're, liberal humanists. Right? Like that we're not liberal humanists, we're not liberal secularists because we're atheists.
Right.
Like our kind, I'd like to believe that our desire to be kind and to be gentle and to be accepting and inclusive, etc., led us to not believing in these dogmas.
Right. My empathy led me to atheism.
Right.
Interesting.
But atheism alone is not necessarily virtuous, and that's very important to remember.
Yeah.
That and as people fall out of religion, there are all kinds of flavors of atheism. I mean, there's not, but there are. Right? There's all kinds of groups that claim the moniker of atheism that you can fall into, and you might find community with. Some of those groups are not good, and so we as people who I think we have a better path, we need to demonstrate the empathy and the kindness and the acceptance that would help people find their way towards this form of atheism or this form of community and not fall into some of those worst places.
If nothing else, we need to just demonstrate the kind of kindness that we want people to have.
We got to build the world that we want to live in.
Yeah.
I think there's something called the golden rule in some book somewhere. And for me, it's also, there's atheist groups that have membership and you sign up and you're part of it. And that's wonderful for the people who want it. Personally, I kind of fight the idea that there is an orthodoxy.
Right.
I don't think there should be. I think this is a huge spectrum of human beings. Look, I get emails into the show all the time. We have people that love Jesus and believe in Jesus who love to listen to our show.
Yeah.
And should we just tell them to fuck off? Because
yes, 100% yes. Fuck off.
Yes.
Fuck off. All of you Jesus lovers, out.
Yeah, but they find meaning in what we're doing, and they find meaning in our show, and I think that they're part of our community.
Totally.
Right? And they should feel welcome as well, so long as those beliefs are not, causing harm to other people.
Yeah.
Right. And I do want to hit on something that you said, Mark, which is the idea of atheist groups, because I don't think that groups necessitate a dogma.
Right.
I think that groups can be a wonderful thing, and that is one of my do's, actually, and I want to talk now to people who are in atheist groups. Do remember that new people to atheism, to skeptical thinking, many of them will be leaving their entire social network behind. They might have lost their whole support structure.
Yeah.
They're going to need new friends, people to help out when they're in need, that sort of thing. So churches are kind of awesome with that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The Mormon church is like being in the goddamn mafia when it comes to like how they help each other.
Yeah.
And it's something that we can be good at too. So I think atheist groups should always be compiling resources. Now, a lot of these groups are way ahead of me on this stuff, but I just wanted to list a few things anyway, just because I think that I want us to be thinking in these terms. Have a list of places where people can meet other people with similar interests. Because look, as great as your group may be, not everyone is going to find a home there. So how wonderful would it be then if when someone first reaches out, you not only welcome them to your group, but you can also guide them to other groups where they can be their authentic selves and feel accepted. I also think that it would be great for groups to have a handy-dandy list of local therapists, doctors, dentists, etc., who are non-belief friendly, because that's not always an easy thing to find.
Mm-hmm.
Also, make it clear that you're there for each other. Help each other move, that sort of thing. This is tricky stuff. You know what I mean? When people lose their support network, it's important for us to be there to help them out with that.
Yeah, we do. Us as a little group unto ourselves, we do kind of an orphan's Thanksgiving. That's really important because if you lose family when you lose your religion, which happens very frequently, suddenly you find yourself alone in moments that are very challenging.
Yeah.
And so, do dumb stuff like that. Have 4th of July events. Here we have Pie and Beer Day, which is coming right up.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, look, this isn't meant to be a compendium of definitive ways to make sure everybody who leaves religion stays out and becomes a great ally in our righteous fight for a secular society. I just want to make sure we're having the conversation. It's important that we give this concept some real conscious thought because, the trends are in our favor, but in order for those trends to be of use to our movement, and I would suggest society, we need to make sure that when someone exits their religion, they don't take one look at us and go running to another nutball belief system.
Right. Or feel abused.
Or feel abused, or feel, downtrodden.
Yeah.
Because we weren't meeting them where they needed us to meet them.
Right.
And we need to make it clear that there's joy and fun and kindness on our side of the fence. That it isn't just a life of grumpy, angry misery the way we're portrayed in the churches and the media. Because look, we're well on our way to a much better society if we can keep the numbers flowing the way they currently are.
It doesn't look like that at the moment, but yes, the numbers are trending in our favor.
Right. And eventually we might be able to undo the damage that our current president is doing.
Yeah, and his Christianist madmen that surround him.
Right. The judiciary that they're installing currently. Yeah. So I think we can rebuild the now dilapidated wall of separation between church and state. We can relearn as a society how to trust the expertise of science, regardless of political affiliation.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, we need the numbers. We need people to join our fight. And people are skittish, scared little balls of emotion. So as much as we wish that we were all guided by the best parts of our logical intellect, we're mostly not.
Yeah.
We're slaves to our feelings, and that means that it's incumbent on each of us who have learned to live outside of religion to guide and help and embrace those who are just dipping a first tentative toe into the beautiful ocean of non-belief.
Yeah, and this is a funny thing coming from a podcaster, but what I think a real trick too is talk less, listen more.
Right. Yeah. That may not be our gig, but for all y'all, that's a great thing.
That's for you guys
because listen, if we aren't waiting with open arms, there are 1,000 preachers and woo peddlers that are.
Yeah.
So get out there and COVID embrace, somehow find a way to hug a new atheist and make them feel welcome.
That's right. Kindness and empathy go way further than anger and rage. And once you've given them that hug, give them the link to our Patreon. Because that's
exactly
how this shit works. All right. Well, thanks, Dan. That was very kind. It's not really our brand, but we'll allow it.
Good. Let's move on before they catch us.
Yeah.
Well, friends, that's it for this week's show.
Hey, we'd love to hear from you. If you have anything to say about, Nazi continents, please send an email at howtoheretic.com.
Or if you want to talk about Nazi incontinence, do not leave us a voicemail about it at 903-88-HOW-TO, which is 903-884-6986. I'm also on Twitter at howtoheretic.
And thanks, as always, to our awesome, incredible patrons.
And thanks to our own little Hitler that lives under the southern ice cap, Cody Layton, for editing the show.
And thank you, dear friends, for tuning in.
Bye, friends.